focused on various teaching strategies such as critical thinking, creative thinking, collaborative approach, teacher development, and action research. Right now, it was for me also respecting research and health topic interest. And by the way, Tonca in Slovak language is a very popular form of antonym. Yeah. It's like you can say Tonca only to your really close friends or family member. So yeah, I want to call it Tonca. She offers a review of literature of higher education for our development. I don't know some more because this is just the article cited Vadis for our education.
Thank you very much for your introduction. It's nice to hear that you are welcome in some place. My name is Tonca, like you have heard, and I'm really privileged to be here today because I'm pedagogist among many philosophers. But on the other hand, I'm a school teacher with PhD in pedagogy, so I feel very comfortable here with my colleagues, people from practice, as well as my colleagues from universities. So thank you for inviting me. And thank you for all your professional efforts, as well. Thank you for the feeling of friendship that we have established in these couple of days that we are together, the days before. So when I was thinking how to approach to this topic, the first idea was, I'm not so sure why, but this citation and verses from the Bible. One doesn't have to be a religious person to know these verses. But the point was, when I was thinking about those verses in the context of pedagogy, I was thinking maybe in the beginning was the upbringing. And the upbringing was pedagogy. And the upbringing was pedagogy. Then another thought about moral education, about character education, about virtues. In the beginning was the virtue, and the virtue was with upbringing, and the virtue was upbringing. So those were my first thoughts as a teacher, as pedagogist. In the beginning, I feel it was like this. But today, we speak mostly about education. So it's not a problem for someone who is native speaker of English, because the English word education means both upbringing and education. But in Croatian language and other Slavic languages, I believe the problem is that we have lost the concept of upbringing. And as we have lost it as a word, we also kind of lost it our way in educational process. In Croatia, we say process of odgoj I obrazovanje, upbringing and education. It's always upbringing in the first place and education together with the upbringing. So why this topic in the beginning? Because it seems like we have dichotomy between education and upbringing, although they work together, they are inseparable two processes. And the same thing is that we mostly see people who divide the importance between cognitive and conative. And they say that we should approach the topics of morality through critical thinking, problem solving, and have some descriptive approach to the topic. On the other hand, it seems like we have people who believe that we should approach the cognitive aspect of our personality. We should use direct instruction, some specific programs that develop specific abilities. They use prescriptive approach, and also we have approaches that see the opportunity to combine those approaches and they believe they are more comprehensive, they believe they should use both aspects of those approaches to the questions of morality. So, my point today is mostly on the question of bringing together and giving the same importance to the processes of education and processes of upbringing in our schools and our universities. When we speak in Croatia about moral, we usually use the term moral competence. And moral competence as something that is dynamically and actively usage of abilities and skills in certain contexts. Here I have an image of a personality, if I can say, a sketch of personality, unique personality as we saw before. And each of us is born with our predispositions to gain knowledge, to develop our intellectual abilities and skills. Each of us has ability to develop interests, attitudes, emotional, social abilities and skills, and also psychomotor abilities and skills. The way they are going to develop depends on our inner personality, but also conditions and also factors in our environment. And most of all, they depend on our self-activity. I think the main topic today was the term activity. And when we see some citations or some thinking about virtue education and ethical, moral education, we see authors who justify, I would say, in the right way, see the need to think together about few elements that must work in synergy. The first thing is ethical moral knowledge, something that we can connect with our cognitive aspect of our personality. Then there is the ethical moral judgment that is also can be connected to our cognitive aspect of personality. But there is the ethical moral action that comprises or brings together cognitive and cognitive and psychomotor abilities of our personality. When we speak about virtues from the point that Rice and Weidenberger say, we can say that first the virtues are characteristics of a person in their action. So they see virtues, they will speak later on more precisely. They see virtues as something that we are in our action, that we show of us in our action. So how to engage in moral actions, how to provide conditions and factors that will nurture moral action is something that we can today see from the point of one pedagogical approach, and that approach is slow pedagogy. I decided today to speak about slow pedagogy because I find connections between that pedagogical approach and topics that we are thinking about today. What does it mean, slow pedagogy? First of all, slow doesn't mean slow in a matter of time. Slow means at your own tempo, at your own pace, at your own rhythm, doing things in a way according to your nature. So, here are some postulates of slow education. First, they find the importance to find time for deep learning experiences with real outcomes. We spoke today about superficial knowledge. This is the opportunity to find time for those things that matter, like moral education, like character building, things that usually not tested as standardized tests, but are important and are real and relevant for a child before us. The other thing that slow education says, find time for curiosity passion, and reflection. Why? If those aspects are at the heart of learning experiences, then we can do what Professor Elisa before said. We can be wondering, we can ask questions, we can be engaged in educational process, we can be mindful, we can be present, we can be immersed in what is going on. And also, we can be immersed in relationship that we are with our colleagues, our professors, our families. So find time, I will say how I find it with my students, for curiosity, passion, and reflection. And also time for dynamic, collaborative, democratic, and supportive relationship for learning. Something that we can all find within our subjects, something that we should, I would say, plan thoughtfully according to our educational aims. Those elements, from my point of view, are elements necessary for character building as well as moral education, whatever approach a person chooses. So Katrina is an author who started the whole slow food movement, and I would say the initiator of the idea of slowness, says that the key moment here is to fight for our right to determine our own tempos, so that we are not pushed from the outside, learning outcomes, outside set goals, to do something just because something should be done. No, we should do it our own tempo in a way that those actions mean something to us, that those aims mean something to us, and that those learning outcomes are important to us. So if I want to go slow today, I will go slow. If I want to go fast, I will go fast. I will here have some example with my students. We decide on our actions, we decide on our content, we decide on our learning outcomes, how to approach classes in a way that we accomplish our learning outcomes. And we decide on the time. For some topics and some issues, we need more time to understand, to discuss, to critically observe, to analyze. For some topics, we need less time because we are more familiar with them. The same thing is for relationships. Some relationships and some virtues take more time for us to be there so that we can, I would say, to express them in actions that we are planning. Slow pedagogy also uses the idea of, like the aim of self-actualization, something that is important also in pedagogy, general pedagogy. When we speak about children, we always speak about our aim to help children to fulfill their own predispositions, their own potentials, to help them realize their potentials to the fullest. So, in that context, teaching process should be transformative because each teaching situation is situation for us to transform, to improve, to change our viewings, to change our emotional states, to develop our ideas. Each educational situation is contextualized and complex because learning is a complex process, and like our personality is complex, like our emotions are complex, like virtue is complex, excellence, also slow pedagogy stands behind all those ideas that will help character building. Deeper understanding, balancing, reflection, time and tempo are also elements that we have heard today, like golden mean in Aristotle, balancing our emotions. balancing our skills, balancing our situations. Everyday reflection and time that we plan according to our own learning and developmental tempos or developmental rhythms. What strategies they suggest? Something that we all do, I would say, every day in our classrooms. Why? Because they help positive social values and positive social behavior. They suggest project learning, problem-based learning, collaborative learning, service learning. So they suggest all those activities that brings us together with common aim, that brings us together in a way that we can learn from each other and learn with each other. In the context of character, it would be like mutual character building, because in communication, in interaction, in mutual acceptance, we are proceeding to the next level of our development, but also we are proceeding to the next levels of the best version of ourselves that there can be. Something they also suggest is split classroom, something that I believe teachers usually do in a simplified way, that students at home prepare and analyze the topic of their choice, and then in classroom they discuss, they communicate, they express their emotions, they express their attitudes, they express their opinions. In that way, they communicate, they collaborate, they learn, they take responsibility for the learning process, and they are in position to reflect and to plan some other activities and some other actions. So in the flipped classroom, they are responsible for their process of learning, and they take full responsibility of what is here done. Teacher is a facilitator, he is helping, he is organizing, he is diagnostician of learning, and teacher is planning time for building relationships and interactions and connections with community. Community is very important in slow pedagogy, like in any pedagogy, because child belongs to one community, he needs to be recognized as a part of community, he helps community, and he learns in community for community. So they suggest service learning, something that can be also, it is shown in many research, well and appropriate for character building. For the last idea of slow pedagogy is something that Hobley author one noticed in a very specific way, I would say. Teachers are role models, but they are not role models in a way they show children how it must be. They are role models in a way they show children how it can be. So he says, we should witness our values. We should live according to our values. We should be a person of integrity. And when children see us as a accountable person, they will see one possible way of a person who is dedicated to his values, who lives his values and witnesses his values. So the importance of living values is something that children appreciate and something that is connected to the next topic and the last one I will say today, and that is being an action researcher. Why? Being a teacher as an action researcher means that you are permanent, personal, and professional developing. So you are developing in both personal and professional aspects. Action research is the style of my life. It is everyday situation for me. Each time I start a new course, each time I start a new generation, I always start as an action researcher, asking myself, where am I today? What are my values? Where I'm going to be? What I want to do in my classroom? I do the plan, I do the action, I observe, and I reflect. I do it with my students in a way that we cooperatively change things in our lives. We are improving some aspects of our lives that we find important, that we find missing. And we always start with our values. And we are analyzing, are those values realized in a way that we expect? If not, what can we do to realize our values? How to make them true and happening? So, as an action researcher, we get data, we get relevant data, we get information in some scientific way. What is it now, and whether what we did was efficient, and whether the change was done. So I propose action research, something as a tool, something as a way of thinking, something as a way of doing to improve our lives in both personal and professional way. And it can be done with children and also separately. Action research is based on the reflection, so my reflection is always a starting point for a new action, new plan, new observation. So, just for the end, how do I see possible directions? First of all, let us go back to the beginning. The virtue and the upbringing. For me, the basis are meaningful relationships, because they are the essence. If we have an interest, if we have positive emotions, if we have something that we are attached to in a positive way, our action will differ from other situations. The other thing, we should have supportive social environment, like colleague Juan Pablo said. Supportive environment in a way that we are accepted as we are, but also enhanced to be the best version of ourselves. So accepted in our differences, in our uniqueness, in something that is our personality, but also accepted in a way that we can be the best of what we can be. Teacher, in that context, is a friend, is someone who will be a role model of possible situation. Someone who will not say, because I did say so, but someone who will set the way, but also give us opportunity to re-question our way, to make judgments, whether I want to be like my father, or like my teacher, or like my friend, or whether I want to choose another actions, another behavior, another way of doing. In the end, we need creative reflective practice, like we saw in action research. So, critical thinker, but creative doer. Pedagogical tact is something that is based in our job. We must have plans, we must have a clear aim what we want to do, we must have both heading at concrete direction, but we also must be creative in that path and finding our own pace how to reach the goal. That means creative and reflective. In order to do so, we should guide children in a way that they have the process of self-upbringing, so they are able to improve their interests, change their socio-emotional competencies, improve their habits, and of course, fulfill their virtues. The next possible direction is not just be focused on actions, but as well on interactions, because interactions direct our actions and vice versa. And we cannot do it without reflection and self-reflection, and we cannot do it, for me, unless we take enough time and unless we do it at our own pace. If we do so, conclusion is the time is on our side. So this was very, I suppose, short in accordance to the timing that we have. But these are some issues that we can address as possible questions for discussion later. So I hope we will have time to discuss it properly and to explain whatever element of this speech and presentation you need to know furthermore. Okay, thank you very much for your
Thank you very much. We'll let the before us the slides. Time is on our side. Yes, it's interesting in terms of